Pregame.com.
Friday night, college bowl action, the bowl season finally winding down. I'm Marco D'Angelo. I'm joined by Scott Spreitzer. We're going to break down Kansas State, Arkansas, Cotton Bowl. Scott, this is going to be your free pick. I'm going to counterpunch you here. Set the table. What should we look at in this game?
Well, Marco, first of all, this isn't the Michael Bishop-led Kansas State Wildcats that we're talking about here with this 22-6 touchdown ratio and his 2,800 yards passing and a legitimate national championship contender back in the 90s, but I still give Snyder credit for what he's done again because, he's done it twice now at this university. They went from being the worst college football program of all time into a top 10 perennial program his last several years there. He leaves, Ron Prince lowers the notch and takes the program down in just a couple of years, comes back, and here they are again. They're relevant. We're talking about them. They're 10-2. But the bottom line is, while I give him credit for instilling that confidence, it's nowhere near the same program that he had in the late 90s, early 2000s, when he was going and getting guys like Michael Bishop to play quarterback, extremely good athletes, and surrounding them with these incredible JUCO transfers. And they had speed on both sides of the ball back then, and they gave speed teams a lot of problems, and they beat those teams more often than not. This year, it's been a lot of smoke and mirrors. Yeah. I mean, I'll give him credit for a guy like Colin Klein. He's 6'5", and he's 230, but he's never going to be confused skill-wise with Dante Culpepper. And the bottom line is about a guy like Colin Klein, what he does do is he manages well. In fact, he doesn't turn the ball over and commit those costly errors, and that's what Snyder wants out of this quarterback.
Well, a stat that I have here, I'm going to throw some stuff at you here just because I can make a case for both sides in this game, and that's why I'm on the fence with this one. But Kansas State does take care of the football. Right. They don't turn over. 9 of their 12 games this year, 1 turnover or less. That's insane in today's, football landscape with, the offenses becoming more wide open. But that's not Kansas State. They score points, but they're not throwing the football over the field. And the quarterback, is he a quarterback or is he a running back playing the quarterback position? Because he runs the ball as much or more than, and he's a big guy. I mean, this guy can take
like a tight end.
Yeah. And but he gets the job done. And I'll admit, this is a team, and it's why I'm kind of on the fence on this game, that I look at them every week. I look at the statistics. I look at the games, and I go back and look at the games that they just played. I break down the box score. I watch the game, and I go, how did they do that? How did they just win this game, and yet they keep doing it?
Right.
Both teams are 10-2. Ironically, the 2 losses that Arkansas has is to the 2 best teams in the country, LSU and Alabama. The 2 losses that Kansas State has is to, the 2 of the better teams that was from the Big 12, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma fell off at the end of the season, but Oklahoma State, we saw what, they did all year. These teams are for real. They deserve to be where, to be in a big bowl game, but who comes out on top in this game?
Well, that's the thing. When you go 10-2, when you win 10 games and you're in the SEC or the Big 12 or the Pac-12 or things like that, then obviously you deserve to be in the position you're in, and that's what they are. But when you break it down, they've been outgained Kansas State by 664 yards this season in just 12 games. They're getting outgained by 50 yards per game. And I'm not making this argument, by the way, for Arkansas. It's the SEC, and it's a big step. It's not a big step up for Kansas State because, as you mentioned, they played both Oklahoma schools. They played Texas A&M. Okay, A&M was down, but we saw what they did in the bowls. In fact, the Big 12, as we talk about this right now, is 6-1 straight up in the bowls, and most of those wins have been pretty dominant, pretty impressive. The only loss by the Big 12 so far was by Iowa State, which lost to Rutgers. Iowa State was not expected to be playing in the postseason. Most people had this team winning 3 or 4 games this year. So the Big 12 has represented themselves well. So I don't buy that. If you're not talking about LSU and Alabama, I don't buy the SEC Big 12 class difference. I think they're pretty close. But as far as what Kansas State has done against step-up athletic offenses like they are going to face here, and remember, Arkansas has scored at least 31 points in every game except for against Alabama and LSU. K-State is no Alabama or LSU on defense. Kansas State gave up 58, 52, and 50 points to Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Texas A&M. And while a couple of those teams had more turnovers in their games than K-State than the Wildcats did, it wasn't ridiculous. It wasn't the +6 turnover ratio or something like that Kansas State grew used to. But what I got some notes here, and I'm going to read from my notes. Oklahoma 690 yards, 9.2 yards per play against K-State. Oklahoma State 575 yards, 9.1 yards. There's two teams that got over 9 yards per play against Kansas State. Even A&M had almost 500 yards in that game, and it went into overtime. K-State was able to win the contest. But the bottom line is, I just think it's going to be another high-scoring game. Arkansas, if they hold on to the ball, they're going to win this football game, I believe, because Kansas State has won all their games based off of turnovers, unless you throw in the Kent State opening season kind of clash.
Right. In turnovers, this is one of those things, and for me as a handicapper, you talk about breaking the games down. You use the word smoke and mirrors, and I've used that phrase with this team too. At the Tuesday meetings, every week, all the guys were taking Kansas State, and I'd be saying, but they're getting outgained. They're getting, right. And yet they kept finding a way to cover. At some point, is turnovers a process of luck or a process of good coaching? Because when the same team keeps winning the the turnover battles week after week after week, because when it's luck, it's supposed to be that ball bounces 50-50. Yeah, but it doesn't when it involves Kansas State. So at what point do you start saying, this team's, they're coached to strip balls, they're coached to whatever, and it makes it tough. I can tell you last year, a perfect example in the NFL, and it caused me problems with that team. I started staying away from their games because my style of handicapping says I got to go against them because of their stats, but they kept winning. It was the New England Patriots. They were continually getting outgained last year, but they were still covering the spreads. They were winning the turnover battles, getting that key, possession. I remember the one game against San Diego, the turnovers, and they were just bonehead plays. Now, sometimes that does go to coaching.
Sure.
Like a Bill Belichick team doesn't make mental mistakes.
Right.
Bill Snyder's teams don't make mental mistakes.
Exactly.
Then we see some of these other bowl games that we've seen so far this year where stupid plays or bad coaching decisions can actually, dictate the games rather than the players. And
well, I think the coaches here are pretty even as far as this. When you're talking about Bobby Petrino for Arkansas, and of course with Snyder, but you talk about predicting fumbles or turnovers, and is it something to do with coaching? I do believe that has a little bit to do with it, because if you watched K-State the final year under Prince, their former head coach, they were out of position a lot on defense. And Snyder, in fact, one of his players, excuse the grammar, but one of his players said this week, he goes, we ain't got no 5 stars and we ain't got no 4 stars, And that's true. They don't have 4 and 5 star blue chip athletes. But the thing you can notice right away, game one, when Snyder took back over this program from Prince, their players are in the right position on defense. They're not out of position. Guys aren't running around with their heads cut off, like a chicken with their heads cut off in the secondary. Everybody knows where they're supposed to be. It's a well-positioned football team. So part of it is this team doesn't make too many mental miscues. The other part is their ball hawking. And it's funny, I'm glad you brought this up. I did a TV show back in late November. It was around Thanksgiving. We were talking about the 49ers and the fact that this team has such a big-time turnover advantage this year. And there was a picture, a still photo above my shoulder as I was talking about the Niners, showing like 7 Niner defenders and 1 opposing player chasing a fumble.
Wow,
and so you do have that ball hawking, that awareness. And Snyder, that's what he brings to K-State's program. He brings that awareness, and he brings the fact that they're always going to know where they're supposed to be on the field. And that goes a long way in not maybe producing the turnovers, but it does go a long way into recovering the fumbles or being in the right place to pick off a pass. So you got to factor that into the equation. At the same time, when they did step up against talent level offenses like they're going to see with Arkansas, Oklahoma State, they didn't get those turnovers to allow them to win, and they got blasted off the field by the Sooners. So, but what I'm saying here, though, is I'm not looking at a side for this segment. What I like is the total. I think it's going to go over. And I do believe there's going to be a couple of turnovers here or there that are going to allow one of these teams to have a short field situation. Now, what I can't have when you're talking about a total in the 60s and low 60s is for these teams to go on 60-yard drives and then turn it over inside the other team's 25. But I think you're going to see a couple of miscues here and there that are going to help this total. Arkansas's offense, if they don't turn it over, are going to be extremely tough to defend.
That's a very good point. I want to elaborate on that. Sometimes where people just look at box scores and don't really go inside a game, and they see a game that had a lot of turnovers, and maybe the game didn't go over, and there's like, oh, they played great defense. They might not play great defense. If you got to know where those turnovers are, because as easy as they can be a quick score, they can be a score killer. And if you spent, a 6-minute drive to get down inside the 20, and then you turn it over. That just kills an over-under for you, especially, like you said, when we're dealing with a high number.
Right.
And the point I'm going to make here, this is one of the highest numbers that Arkansas has seen all year.
Sure.
This is the second highest total that Arkansas has been involved in, but they have been an over machine this year, both teams. 8-3 to the over, so that supports your case. One stat I will give to Arkansas for guys that might be considering that side. I'm neutral, like I said, but Arkansas, the last 16 times that they've been a favorite, so that's saying the teams they're supposed to beat, they are. They're 12-4 against the spread the last 16 as a favorite. So this is going to be a good game. Up and down the field, I can see that, and I agree with you. The teams that Arkansas has faced were their two losses, Alabama and LSU. Okay. Much better defenses than anything that Kansas State has seen in the Big 12.
Yeah, when you're giving up 7 to 9 yards per play like they did several times, as I mentioned, you got some problems, some leaks on defense. And if you've got an offense with as much skill, position, talent as Arkansas does, they can take advantage of it. I will mention as part of this total, K-State has scored 28 or more points in 8 of their last 11 games.
Yeah.
So if it does get into one of those up and down the field battles, K-State finds a way to stay in it, partially because of turnovers, but also because Colin Klein doesn't make the dumb mistakes normally. Right. He could.
Yep.
Nothing's a lock. we stay away from that word.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is he could make a couple of turnovers here that gives Arkansas a short field also.
Okay, well, there you have it. This game is being played on Friday night. If you're watching it early, we're taping on Wednesday, so I want to give you a little promo. Thursday, we always do it pregame, Scott. We feature one handicapper, and we sell best bet from that capper for $1. So check that out. This week, the dollar capper happens to be me. RJ sent the word down to Johnny, and I got to give a game away for $1. So
do I get it for free or do I got to pay?
I'll give it to you.
I'm kind of cheap. You said $1.
Well, you told me about a good place to eat for lunch, so that's worth the tip there. So anytime Marco can find a new place to eat, he's happy. So we'll give you that. But check that out Thursday, and every Thursday at pregamepros.com. There'll be one capper featured for $1. You'll get his best bet. It's a great way. A lot of new people come to the site, Scott, and that's a good way to get your feet wet. You want to see what it's about, trying out a capper, and see if you like paying for picks and the kind of information you get. And like I said, I talked about this with with Brian on the video, and that Pregame is the only site. I mean, there's a lot of pick sites out there, but we're one of the only, if not the only, that where the handicappers themselves go in and converse with people in the forum. Most it doesn't happen because everybody's bashing them or whatever. We want to help people. They have a question, we answer them. We talk about our games and different thoughts and things, and that's what I really like about pregame. It is a community, and we're here to sell this.
I'll say this too. I mean, one of the things that I like about pregame, and I know I'm not one of I've been in the business for 20 years, so I don't have to sound like I'm patronizing anything. Yeah. But the bottom line is I've been involved now with pregame for about a month or so, 4 to 6 weeks. And there are some savvy posters on the forum who aren't professional handicappers, but they know their stuff. I mean, I'll go and look and see what, certain guys like on certain games in college basketball, football, what have you. Right. And it's all legitimate, intelligent handicapping that these guys are doing from their home and then sharing it on pregame. So there's some really good guys on the forum. And I was saying that even before I joined pregame. Right. That's one of the reasons I gave RJ the phone call. Yeah. Because I thought, man, I'd love to work with that site because it's not just the handicappers, it's also a quality forum.
So check it out. That's it. Scott's play is to take the over. I'm neutral on the game, but I got to agree. I see a lot of points, with you, Scott, in this game. Check out the dollar capper each and every Thursday. As I said, this week it's me. We'll be back. I got one more video to tape this week. It's going to be with RJ. Going to be looking at an NFL playoff game, Denver and Pittsburgh. Me and RJ have been covering those two teams all year, so now we get to throw them together. That's just one less video I got to do.
There you go.
Because they're grouped together there. But thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. Be round 2 of the playoffs. The bowls will be done, but we'll be kicking into basketball next week as well.